I was covering the pain with progress and busyness and perfectionism and success and whatever it was so that I didn't have to feel my own pain. I would numb with busyness. That was my addiction of choice, was busyness.
So much of our culture is about distraction, right? I mean, our phone in itself is a constant distraction, right? When is it that we actually allow ourselves to to feel what we feel, to think what we think?
People may be extremely lonely, but they have their phone, so they don't know they're lonely because they act like they're busy and they have their phone, and they're the life of the party, but they're dying inside.
Today I'm talking to Molly Carroll. She's a therapist, an author, a coach, and has spent 30 years sitting with people in their hardest moments. She's given 2 TED Talks, written books on intuition, self-discovery, and hosts a podcast called Cracking Open. But what I want to really get into with Molly is something that she believes most of us are avoiding. We're in the middle of a loneliness epidemic. And it's not because we lack people around us, it's because we lost connection with others and with ourselves. This conversation is about what cost us, what Molly learned when she had to face it in her own life, and what it actually takes to come back.
Mm.
Is there something in you that enables you to be vulnerable with people,
Mm.
that enables them to connect with you? Because I find that people open up to you when the way we show each other we're human is that we share the stories of the struggles or of our shortcomings.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I think when I was younger, I got in some trouble, if I'm really honest. I got in some trouble. I was a little bit of a partier. I think that was my vulnerability, is I
Mhm.
didn't hide it. I was honest about it. My family and I would deal with it, or my friends and I would laugh about it, or we'd be like, "Oh gosh, what happened last night, Molly?" And I'm lucky that it didn't turn into an addiction. I'm really lucky. I did not pull that lottery card. I had experienced death at a much younger age than a lot of people, and I think it was through losing some friends and family that I really loved. And I was just brought to my knees. And so I had to ask for help and become the client, become the one that had to ask people to learn to receive. Like my addiction was overgiving.
There are two things that come up. One is that most people don't get heard. And so when somebody asks good questions and you hear them, then they do open up more, because it's very rare that somebody actually does ask them anything about them, right? Because most humans just want to share what they have to share and think about what they can say next rather than actually listen. So
Mhm.
that makes a lot of sense. And then what you're saying too is, and I think a lot of people have that, is like the givers or the caretakers have a very hard time to be taken care of. My wife says it's always about me. It's like, it's like very hard for me to help you, or very hard for me to help yeah, to be there for you, because you want it in a certain way and you don't actually accept it.
Uh-huh. Right, right. Yeah. So it's a process for me to give myself permission to
Mhm.
say, "You don't have to work today," or, "Molly, you can reach out to someone and ask for help. You can tell that person you can't meet with them or do an obligation," or something like that. It's a work in progress, but I am getting better at it. It is getting a little easier for me to be more vulnerable and to ask or share my own personal experiences. I think it's not just going to a conference or taking care of clients or my kids or life. I think the world we're living in right now can be quite draining emotionally. We're living in a time where technology is the highest and the fastest it's ever been. So we're dealing a lot with technology, whether it's Zoom meetings or AI writing our emails or being driven by our phones and our calendars, to just culturally what everyone's feeling in our culture. And I think people are afraid to talk about this because they don't want to be controversial. It's about recognizing the makeup of a human, our nervous systems, our soulful systems, our hearts, and our humanity. And I think people are suffering right now and they want hope. They want to know it's going to end. They want to know that there's another side for this sacrifice. And so it is just your day in and day out life, but I also think it's the bubble, it's the vibration, it's the experience that we walk out in the world every day. So it's really about recognizing and doubling down on your tips and tools right now of what makes you be more grounded, be more conscious, stay in your heart, not go to fear, and remember that love is the deepest connector of anything. And so like how do you stay in the vibration of love? And which is not always easy. So I think it's a combination of both those things.
So how do you support others with that and yourself that
Mhm.
you don't slip into fear?
For myself, I've learned a couple things that I do every single day, and I was not very open to talk about this, and I'm talking about it now. In the fall, I have two children. I have a 20-year-old son and an 18-year-old daughter, and my son is playing soccer at a college up in Washington. And he had an injury, and because of the injury, we had to do X-rays and MRIs. And in one of the MRIs, they found a lesion, a tumor. And so we had to go down the path of getting an orthopedic oncologist and that whole path. And in that time of when I was worried about my son, part of me knew he was going to be okay. Doctor said it's just a varicose vein. You shouldn't worry, but it doesn't matter. My mama heart was just dying inside. I had to double down to survive, to not get pulled in the quicksand of fear around my son's health. So I started my 4-7-9 breathing. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, let go for 9 seconds, 3 rounds. I ended up saying the rosary. I was raised Catholic. And even though I call myself a Buddhalic, I'm kind of like half Buddhist, half Catholic. And so but I ended up saying the rosary every single day, and I have ever since. And it's totally changed my life, whether it's a mantra or a meditation where you do the prayer beads, but mine's being the rosary. And I just had to get in nature. I had to get quiet. I had to remind myself before I get out of my bed, one of the first questions I ask myself is, where is my nervous system today? If I'm on my sympathetic, I get to my parasympathetic, breath work, grounding my feet, yoga, meditation, all the things everyone knows. Everyone that's listening to your podcast probably knows these things, but are they practicing them? It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. So that's leading into my clients. I am a practitioner or a speaker that is rooted in my Midwestern morals and values. And a lot of that comes from the heart. My father used to always say to me, all you owe anyone is the truth. And around like the 3 A's in 12 step, we call them awareness, acceptance, and action. I'm a big believer in homework. So I could sit for an hour with all my clients and ask them, how does that make you feel? Tell me more about your mother. I'm sorry you didn't get the promotion. That does not work for people. After 25 years of being a therapist, it does not work. It just keeps them a victim. I am a big believer of getting out of your story. I listen to the story, but then we move on. I'm a big believer in giving homework. And then I'm their accountability partner. I check in on them. They have to send me texts when they finish it, when they talk to their boss about promotion, when they talk to their partner about how to be heard more, when they drink only one glass of wine versus two, or no wine, and they end up having tea or water. All these things, getting out in nature. I'm a big believer in action steps and in changed behavior to move to a better place in your psyche, in your soul, in your nervous system, in your actions and how you come out into the world.
So talk to me about what the breathing technique does to the body and why that is so important, because I think that a lot of times people, they know what they're supposed to do, but then they can't really rationalize why it's important, right? So yeah, breathing is good for you. Okay, blah blah. I'm not going to do it, right? Or meditation or yoga or whatever. But let's start with the breathing.
So it's really about practicing it, because we could tell everyone all the science and data and what breathwork does, and then we could talk about the somatics of it. We hold grief in our lungs. And it could be grief of society, grief of a loved one, grief of a divorce, grief of the body. There's so many different areas that grief spreads across humanity and culture. And so we now know that grief is held in the lungs in particular. And so breath work really is powerful for the lungs. The next thing is piggybacking on our nervous system. A quick tutorial is we have something called the autonomic nervous system, which encompasses our sympathetic, which is our fight or flight, fix or freeze, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and your digest. And we need both systems. But the problem is when your sympathetic nervous system, which we used to be, to fight off a saber-toothed tiger, so we needed it in that prefrontal cortex. But when it gets ignited, it stays with you. And it could be from an email. It could be someone cutting you off in traffic. It could be any sort of triggering mechanism. It stays on for 90 to 120 minutes. And you're flooded with cortisol, which is a toxin, which is an inflammatory, which allows your stress receptors to ignite, and that's not a healthy place to be. So like a light switch, you need to turn off the sympathetic nervous system and turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. And the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way to do that is through your breath. It automatically turns it off, whether it's box breathing, 4-4-4-4, 4-7-9. So just do it before you get out of bed. Anyone listening today, I'll get Nebraska on you. Do it when you're making your coffee. Do it while you're going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Do it while you're driving to work. Do it in between clients. Just practice it and do 3 rounds, and then ask yourself, do I feel better? Yes. Okay, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it before I pick up my kid at school. I'll do it before I have to have a hard conversation with my partner. I'll just do it. There's no way any science or data is going to change your behavior. It may enforce it and inspire it and rationalize it, but the best thing that's going to change your wellness and your body and the way you present to the world is by action, is doing it. I love the quote, courage follows action. Courage just doesn't arrive. Inspiration just doesn't arrive. It's usually by doing something, and the emotion follows the action.
Yeah, that's right. And the breathing is so easy because you do feel it very quickly, right? Meditation is much harder because it's a much longer process for our brain to get rewired. But the breathing immediately lowers our cortisol. We're telling our bodies that we're safe because we're breathing in less than we're breathing out. And it really works wonders. Yeah, I think it's great that you're sharing that. You built your career and your practice and your books and your TED Talks, right? All rooted in being the person who holds the space. How much of your identity got fused into that role? And then when did you start to notice that?
It's a really good question. I think it still is. I think my identity is still fused in it. I still feel the days like yesterday. If I didn't work, am I a good human being? My identity is still very wrapped in that I am a good person if I'm helping someone. I am a good person if someone sends me a note saying, I loved your podcast. I am successful if a company says, yes, let's have you come speak. So it's still woven in there. Now, it's not as much as it used to be. And how do I know this? Because it's a body sensation. I don't feel the anxiety as much as I used to around success. But what is different now for me is that I trust that I am there. I don't have to prove it. I feel in my body that I'm doing okay. And I think that's my connection to a higher power. I've been in 12-step for a long time. I go to Al-Anon, and which is a 12-step program for children or family members of addicts. And so 12-step has been one of my greatest foundations of unraveling my identity because it won't let you make it about what you do for the person. It's about how you feel and how you're reacting around codependency or behavior patterns or victimhood, all those characteristics that don't serve us, don't serve our humanity, don't serve our heart, don't serve our human connection to people. And so, what I've learned about my identity is my deepest connection is to my higher power, to my source, which I call God. People could call it, I mean, I'm married to a scientist who's an atheist, agnostic, he says now. You could call it
Yeah, the universe.
the universe. Yeah. So, my identity is still interwoven into my work for sure. I'd be lying if I said otherwise, but I catch it faster. I feel more grounded in who I am because I'm connected to.
It sounds that your work is very much aligned with who you are at the source level. And that's why it's your drive because of that alignment. What do you tell your clients? Well, how do you work with your clients when they're driven by external motivation rather than their internal motivation?
It's different for everyone. I always start with compassion. Like, I can see why you are driven by performance because it's not just about your paycheck coming home. It's about 250 of your employees. And so letting them know that I really see them, I don't judge them, and I can align with them. I'm the same way. We're not two separate people sitting here. I'm the clinician and you're the client, And so I try to always make that my foundation of working with people. So it's like, Stephen, if you were talking to me right now about how you're driven by something, let's say this podcast, and you really want to be a success and you want to be as popular as Joe Rogan and you want the numbers to be huge and then you get clients and all these things, I would listen to you and then say, something to try to get underneath the underneath the underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where did that come from? Is it historical? If it's hysterical, it's historical. So if I feel like hysterical, it's kind of this anxiousness. There's something deep in there. Your father was a high performer. You only received love if you were performing. It could be your culture, because you said you're German. And what is your culture?
Japanese and German.
Japanese and German. Look at your two cultures. Two high-driven cultures, right? So I've worked with German people before. We've gone back to, epigenetics. Like, one of them had all these different trauma responses, but was never abused. And we realized that our great-great-grandfather was in the Holocaust. She had the epigenetics of a great-great-grandfather. She literally presented as a Holocaust survivor. So I worked with her as if she was a Holocaust survivor. I did the same thing I would work with anyone who was physically, emotionally, or sexually abused, right? So it's really about asking the right questions, holding a loving, deep space that I'm human, you're human, let's go. This isn't serving you anymore. I know it's not. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's not act like everything's okay. You're a high achiever, and I don't want you to lose all of that because I believe it. But I want you to lose the parts that are not serving you or your relationships anymore. That's the part we're going to work on. So
Yeah.
you could be a better leader, a better parent, a better moral human, kind to the person at the gas station versus like, hurry up, fill my gas. Come on, I gotta go. It's like, no, that's not okay. Hey, how's your day going? Thank you so much for pumping my gas. What a job. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what comes up again for me is it goes back to being aligned with your values, right? So when we're not aligned with our values, then what we're driven by is our ego,
Mm-hmm.
and that actually is not aligned with our values, right? It seems like it's very aligned with us because we identify so much with the ego, but in reality, the ego is not us. And working with clients, I try to convey to them that they're good enough already without the money or the success or the title or the likes or
Mm-hmm.
the podcast listeners or whatever it is, right? Because that's, yeah, that goes back to the essence, right?
I love that. They're good enough already. And it reminds me of something. I think my kids, because they're like 20 and 18 now, I think they were probably like in third and fifth grade, right?
Mhm.
Elementary school. I lost my father. My father died 15 years ago, right? So I was in my late 30s, way too young. And my mom died 5 years later. She was never had a day of sickness in her life, healthy, so young looking, and she got pancreatic cancer and she died 5 years later. And my best friend's husband died of suicide, and my two of my best friends died of cancer. So I had lost my great grandmother I lost another grandfather. I lost 7 people within a year and a half. In that period, like my mom and dad were 5 years apart, but after my dad dying, I lost a year and a half people. Every time the phone rang, I was so afraid it was going to be that someone's dying. I had PTSD. Plus, I had just done my second book. I had done my second TED talk. I was running retreats. I was a therapist. My kids were young. It was crazy. My ego was on fire. I was running a million miles an hour, and it was probably about noon, right? And because I was home and I was having lunch, and I was in my kitchen, and all of a sudden, I collapsed. I literally collapsed on the floor. I didn't pass out. I hit my head and I could not get up. I
Hmm.
was like paralyzed on the floor and I was just sitting there. And 2 hours had passed, 2.5 hours. And I look at the clock and I realize it's time for me to go pick up my kids at school. And if I don't go get them, no one's going to get them. And this was not a time with cell phones. I mean, I think we had a flip phone, but the smartphone wasn't there, right? And I remember grabbing the side of the cupboard and grabbing the handle and like grabbing the top of the countertop and my chair. And I pull myself up and I grab my keys and I somehow get in my car and I drive to go pick up my kids. And it was in that, my whole business is called cracking open. It was like in that cracking open moment, I knew I needed help. It was like my rock bottom on the floor moment. And all I heard driving to pick up my kids is, "You need help.
Hmm.
You are sick and you need help." And it was from that moment on that I got back into therapy. I stopped doing retreats. The retreats, I took women all over the world, Costa Rica, California, Mexico, Oregon, and leading these huge retreats, like 25, 30 women, around cracking open and yoga and meditation. They were absolutely phenomenal, life-changing, but it took so much out of me. And it was just one of those moments that I had to stop and my ego had to dissolve. My identity had to go on the back burner. And I said, I have to deal with the death of my parents and the death of my friends and the death of my grandparents. And I got to really be honest, have someone else hold space for me to cry and to grieve and to know that I wasn't okay and I needed help.
Yeah. So do you think that you got so busy and so successful because you didn't want to deal with, I mean, one of those deaths would have been enough
Ugh.
for you had said you had 7?
Yeah, 7 deaths in a year and a half. Absolutely. I mean, I was raised in the Midwest. Look at me even now. Like, I think drive is okay. I still have it. My dad's favorite quote was, "The harder you work, the luckier you get." There
Mhm.
wasn't a lot of downtime in my family. And, except at the end of the night when someone would have a drink, watch TV, that was people's downtime. That's what I saw. I didn't see people meditating. I didn't see people laying on a couch reading a book. It was 5 kids, busyness, a lot to do. So I was covering the pain with progress and busyness and perfectionism and success and getting another client, doing another speaking engagement, doing another retreat, whatever it was, so that I didn't have to feel my own pain. I would numb, numb, numb with busyness. That was my addiction of choice, was busyness. Absolutely.
I
It
think
was
that
an addiction. Yeah.
that's probably part of the pandemic that we have, right? That we most of us feel like that we have to be busy. Most of us feel like we have to do all these things and that we don't have the time or the necessity to deal with ourselves. So much of our culture is about distraction, right? I mean, our phone in itself is a constant distraction, right? When is it that we actually allow ourselves to feel what we feel, to think what we think.
I mean, it's so rare. And I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think that's where Sangha, Steve and I are involved in a beautiful community called Sangha around consciousness and coming back to the heart of what's important and raising consciousness for humanity. I think that's why I joined Sangha. I think that's why I really got inspired by my nervous system and get deeper into my somatics of the body after I collapsed. That's why I try, and I'm far from perfect, to put my phone away, even in the car, not look at my texts, not look at my emails, not always have noise, a podcast, music, like actually sit in silence. Because one of the therapeutic tools that I've also seen, it's kind of after 25 years of doing this work, it's kind of like you see these, we're not all that different, to be honest. We all have a different story, but we really have a similar thread of like what works for humanity. And, there's all these tips and tricks, and here's the things you got to do every day. Here's the things but one of the greatest things that anyone listening today that they could just do is just really getting to know themselves the best they can. Like asking yourself the question, what time do I like to eat dinner? And even using your name. Like, what time does Molly like to have lunch? What time does Steven like to wake up in the morning? Not what time should I wake up? Not what time is good for my wife and my kids. What time does Steven like to exercise? If Steven had a magic wand, what would his life be like? Not worrying about money or kids or success or ego. What would Steven's magic wand day be?
Yeah, I
Just,
think that that's so
yeah.
important. I had a client session today, and we were reviewing his values, and the number one was for him security. And we went through all of the other ones, and I think the number two one was his family. And so I
Mm.
said to him, you know, would you sacrifice your family to have security? And then I asked him, is the security number one, is that your priority or is that your wife's priority?
Mm.
What I wanted him to do is to sit with it, right?
Yeah.
So he had reflections on it, but a lot of these reflections that we have are still things that we think we should be saying
Right.
or that we should do. And all this should of like, that's driven by our partners, by how our parents raised us, how our society sees us. And that's why I love so much what you said, is like so rare that we actually do not listen to all of this external noise and we truly feel what it is that our essence wants.
Hmm.
Because most of the time, or I think actually all the time, it has nothing to do with the external motivation that we've talked about earlier,
Hmm.
right? So if we can align with our true values, all of those other things become, meaningless.
I mean, I love those questions you asked your client. I think those are so powerful, and anyone just listening could, this. I agree. I mean, and that's where you kind of have to get tough with yourself a little bit, and lovingly and compassionately and all those things, but also a little bit of like, I am going to put into my to-do list me, and I'm going to put it in at 10 a.m., not 5 p.m., because I'm exhausted at 5 p.m. I'm going to actually put it in at 10 a.m. 10 to 11 a.m. is my time. Do I want to do a puzzle? Do I want to go for a walk? Do I want to make a cup of tea and finish my book? Do I want to, and I know this is a privilege, right? I know this is, I'm not speaking just, but even if you have a 9 to 5 job, you say, I'm going to put myself in from 8 to 9, or I'm going to put myself in from 8:30 to 9, or take a little bit of longer lunch break. Whatever it is to put you in your day and looking outside of yourself and saying, how much is my today about everyone else but me? And how is that getting to know myself on a deeper level? To be able to serve me, and it's not selfish, but from a ritualistic, mental health, spiritual, holistic way so that I could be more available for humanity or others.
Yeah. It's not at all a selfish thing. And I think that that's what a lot of people get wrong, on social media or also just the perception is that if I have me time, that is an ego thing.
Mhm.
Actually, me time, the proper me time really is to be present and to reconnect so that you are capable of giving more.
Mm.
So a lot of my listeners are leaders, either executives or entrepreneurs, and the they often are so busy and they believe that they have to be in every meeting. And in reality, that if they want to be better leaders, they need to take the time. They need to cut out all those unnecessary meetings that they know they should not be in, all the unnecessary decisions that they're making that somebody else should be making, so that they actually can have that me time to create that space to
Mhm.
truly be present, to truly become a better leader, which is not a selfish thing.
I'd also piggyback on that, and it makes me think about a story. I was working with a company in Austin. They brought me in to speak, and it was an engineering company. It was kind of like a Zoom. It's like a software engineering company. And I walk in the room, there's probably like 45 people there, and it was 42 men and 3 women,
Hmm.
right? And I get up there, and I always have kind of start by people having doing breath or let's get into our bodies. And I could see everyone's arms crossed. And the CEO was ex military. And he was a lovely human being, a great leader, amazing leader, but, but reserved, conservative, and private. A lot of characteristics of CEOs. So people started breaking, like softening, and I did my whole talk, and I'm halfway through, and I'm kind of having them do an exercise. And I walk up to the CEO and I say, "Hey, you need to get up and tell a personal story." And he said, "Molly, I can't." And I said, "I'm not telling you if you can or can't. You need to. Your team, the people that work for you, not only need to know that you can take care of yourself, they need to know that you're human.
Hmm.
That is leadership." So we break out, come, let's everyone come back together. They finish the exercise. We kind of, break down the exercise, what they learn, what were their takeaways, where are they going to be their action steps, moving forward, blah, 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 accountability partners. And then I say, hey, I'm just going to call him Sam. Sam has something really important to say around this concept. I think I was teaching about self-agency or I don't know what. And he gets up and he tells a beautiful story around how hard it is for him and the responsibility that he carries. Because he's like, I know your son's going to summer camp this summer. And I know your daughter just was a freshman in college. And I want you to know that I lose sleep overnight because you just talked to me about how 3 of your kids right now have braces. And the whole room changed. The energy of the room changed simply by the CEO of the company getting up and telling a personal story about how he loses sleep at night, thinking about their own stories, his own stories of, his employees. So it's like, that's, storytelling, humanity, human connection. These are very strong qualities of leadership.
Yeah. And I think that relates so much to this pandemic that we talked about the loneliness pandemic, because we can't be quiet, because we have a hard time being vulnerable. And because of those two things, it's hard for us to connect with others. And so if you don't know yourself, how are you able to share with others of who you are?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're in a loneliness epidemic. You're right, loneliness pandemic. We're at the highest rates of anxiety and depression and suicide ideation we've ever seen. Men are much higher than women around suicide. High blood pressure, smoking, and being overweight. You're way less likely to die from those than you are from loneliness. And it's something that is very sneaky because people may be extremely lonely, but they have their phone. So they don't know they're lonely because they act like they're busy and they have their phone, and they're the life of the party. But they're dying inside. And so I say all this, and what is the medicine? What is the cure? It's so personal. So I would just empower anyone listening today to simply do one exercise. And that is to carry around a little journal or a little book or a little piece of paper and actually go back to writing when things make you feel alive. I went to my kids' game, and even though they didn't play very much, they came off the field and said I still had fun. One of my employees stayed extra hours to, clean up an area that no one else would wanted to clean up, or finish a project that no one else wanted. Just these little things. I listened to Steven's podcast, Midlife Remix, and he had someone on that reminded me that I can be a good leader and be human. But write it down, because when you write things down, you're 46% more likely to make change simply by writing it down. And do that for a week and notice if you feel less lonely. Notice if you feel like you have more action steps. I am going to join that running club. I do feel like I want to reach out to this friend and ask them if they want to go for a hike this weekend. I am more motivated to get up in the morning, check on my nervous system, journal for 5 minutes, do a 5-minute meditation practice, train for a run, whatever it is, just noticing that you're noticing energy, you'll have more energy in the body.
Yeah, I think that's it's very true. The writing down definitely, the journaling definitely helps. The writing down definitely helps. I know, similar to you, I give my clients a lot of homework. And a lot of that homework is writing and reflection and exercises, because the majority of the work happens outside of our sessions rather than in the session. And my best clients understand that.
Mm. Hey, Stephen, I have an idea before we close, not to turn the tables. I feel like it's hard for me not to be on. If you and I were really going to connect, what would we share?
I could share with you what my trauma has been in my life, and that has shaped me and has given me my superpowers, because my trauma has informed me that everyone has their own story, and that gives me the kind of compassion to be able to sit with people.
Mm.
Um, but what my meditation practice has taught me is that I am not my thoughts. And most of my clients are struggling with that security belief. That's like, I just want to get a job where I'm secure, or I want to just make enough money so that I can that I'm going to be fine, or that my family is going to be fine. And I actually don't believe that that's something that is achievable.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we can't control pretty much anything, and the more we try to white knuckle it, the harder life is going to be, because life's not going to turn out that way. And the thing that you can do is that you can have faith, and faith that either because of yourself or because of a higher being, you're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you a little story to how changing the narrative can change your situation. So this morning, I was meditating, and usually I have my phone on silent mode so I don't get interrupted. But my wife called me, and I picked it up,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't yell at her that she interrupted my meditation, which could have happened. Because we're like, meditation, you got to be quiet. And she said, the school bus is not coming. So I'm like, oh, do you want me to take Cade to school? So I got up, I took her to school, and I was like, I'm so lucky that I'm able to take my son to school today. And I shared that with him. He's nonverbal, so he can't talk back in that way. But we had the best time on the subway, even though it was rush hour, and we
Mm.
were just enjoying ourselves going to school. And then on the way back, I got a seat and I meditated, and I got to start work, and I had a lovely day, even though my day didn't go at all the way I planned it, and there was all these things that I was gonna do that I didn't do.
Right. I love that story. And one of my favorite things I love about the story is the reframing and the action around it. Like, you didn't stay in the role of being annoyed, or you stopped your meditation or interrupt your day. You stayed in the action and the reframing of, oh, wow, I get to spend some time with my son. Yeah, that's good. That's good, Stephen. I liked that story.
How about you?
Um, I would say I'm at a really interesting crossroad right now in my life where I have this immense amount of gratitude, so much gratitude. Like my kids are healthy, my friends are healthy, my marriage is intact, my work, I love what I'm creating, I love what I'm doing, I love working with my clients. I live in Bend, Oregon, I live in nature, I can be outside, right? I really am fully aware of the gratitude that I feel. And yet it's the paradox, the concept of paradox. Because at the same time, I catch myself going into fear. Will my 20-year-old son have to be called to war? How is what's happening in the culture affecting our democracy? I have 2 clients in Israel, right? So are they going to be able to show up for their appointment, or will they have to be in the bunker? And so it's this reality around, and it's not even necessarily politics, right? It's more around, or maybe it is. Maybe I'm just chicken and I needed to say that to like give some sort of caveat. You know, if I'm really brave, I would say it is political. It's spiritual, it's political, it's environmental, it's everything. So it's like, how do I stay in the light? How do I stay in the light amidst darkness? And as a Jungian, we know Jung taught us that it is embracing the dark that makes us whole. So it's finding this paradox place of not burying my head in the sand of like, I'm so lucky. My life is, over spiritualizing or trauma bonding. It's like I live in both and I stay present to both. Yet I don't over identify with my fears. I don't over identify with the dark. I just say, hi, thank you for your service. I see you. And I'm going to do the things I know I need to do to stay in the light.
I love that.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's so important what you're saying. It's so important, and it's so easy for us to slip into fear or just to ignore things that are going on, and you just like saying like they're not real, or you just ignore it. You don't even pay attention to it. But what you said that really resonates is to embrace it in the sense that you're saying that I can't change it. The only thing that I can do is I can accept that it is happening
Mm-hmm.
and that I can't control it. But what I can control is how I react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I giving up by not accepting it?
Right.
How am I showing up to the people that I care for?
It's like those 3 A's that I love. Awareness. I'm aware it's happening. I'm not
Yep.
ignoring it. I'm not burying my hand in the sand. Acceptance. Like, no wonder you feel scared. And this is the reality of it. And this may trigger some of your childhood stuff or whatever the acceptance needs to be. And then action. Where do I need to go now? How do I need to be present? Where do I need to reframe? All those different things are so powerful for me. Yeah. So that is what I would say. I hope that deeply connected me to you as well, Stephen, because this has been such a gift to spend this time with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, and you're an inspiration to a lot of people.
Oh, thanks, Stephen. So are you. So are you. Thank you, Stephen.